Welcome to the Wisdom for Wealth for Life podcast. Let's bridge the gap between your faith and your finances. At Ronald Blue Trust, we apply biblical wisdom and technical expertise to help you make wise financial decisions. Our goal is to help you leave a lasting legacy. In this podcast, you will hear inspiring stories, practical tips, and encouragement from the Ronald Blue Trust family, with special guests along the way. Welcome to the Wisdom for Wealth for Life podcast. The information in these podcasts is provided for general educational purposes only. It is not intended as specific individual advice. The client's experience may not be representative of the experience of other clients, and they are also not indicative of future performance or success. Opinions expressed may not be those of Ronald Blue Trust. In today's episode, Ronald Blue Trust Senior Financial Advisor Kerry Mallory speaks with his clients, Bill and Amber Brigham. They share with us how a brain tumor diagnosis forced Bill to retire early from his position as a CEO of a successful company. They also share with us how biblical financial planning helped guide them through this difficult transition.
Welcome to the Wisdom for Wealth for Life podcast. I'm Kerry Mallory. I'm going to be your host today, and I'm a senior financial advisor at the Ronald Blue Trust office in Atlanta. And I have the pleasure today of being joined by some of my favorite people, Bill and Amber Brigham. Welcome, Bill and Amber.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
You're living through this new season. We began to work together prior to that season, right? And so we began to sort of walk through this journey of your financial stewardship together then. Could you just share a little bit about how you came to be connected with Ronald Blue Trust and with me?
Sure. I think it was completely God's hand in our life, and I'll tell you why. We were just down at Russ and Julie Crossan's one day. They're friends and neighbors. I don't remember why we were there. And we had always had financial counsel and financial advisors throughout our marriage since our 30s, and had good relationships with them. And but something just wasn't, especially as we were getting into our mid-50s, it just felt like values weren't aligned, maybe would be the best way of putting it. So we happened to be down at their house one day, sitting on the back porch, and Russ just literally grabbed a piece of paper and started talking. And you know that line from the movie, you had me at hello? Everything he was saying aligned with, and it was like that's what we had been looking for, whether it was giving or the need to have cash on hand. That was one particular thing that I was always struggling with our previous advisor, because that wasn't a priority and it just seemed common sense to me. But anyway, so we called him, we talked, and we gave him a call and said, we'd really like to sit down for a formal meeting and just kind of hear more about Ronald Blue. And when we came to that meeting, you were in the room.
Yes, I was.
That was our great fortune. And so he had put us together with you, and that was in the fall of 16, so about 5 years ago, a little over 5 years ago. And it's just been, a great relationship ever since. It was exactly what we were looking for at that season in our lives. And then, as you know, going forward, there are a lot of things that we've dealt with, I'm sure we'll get to. And it's just been the perfect place for us to be for all of that.
So, Amber, you mentioned earlier that life hasn't always been rosy, this path you guys have been on, right? That you've had some great ups, but you've also faced some obstacles. Right. Talk to us about some of those, if you would.
Okay. Well, any that occurred before 2017, I've forgotten. About 6 months after we started working with Ronald Blue and with you, Bill was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and it certainly came out of left field. And it was a dramatic event in our lives, and his subsequent surgery and treatment eventually is what led to his retirement at the age of 60, which we had never planned on. So I think that, the faithfulness that God has shown through this event, and first and foremost, how he has given us peace, because our first thoughts, not our first thoughts, a malignant brain tumor causes you to have all kinds of thoughts. But anyway.
I remember that call where
Yes.
you guys called us. I think we were one. You told me I was one of the first calls you made.
Absolutely.
We'd been working together about 6 months, and prior to that, I remember when you were interviewing me. You said, "Hey, if something ever, I want to make sure that Amber's comfortable if something ever happened with me, that she'd be comfortable with her advisor." And you said that, Bill, and at the time, it's a bit of a kind of throwaway line. I mean, yes, it's important, but we're young and invincible.
Yes.
And then this news, and I
Yeah.
remember that call, and you said, we need to talk about the implications
Yeah.
of this.
Absolutely.
So, Bill, what was going through your mind as you obviously come up with this diagnosis that was a shock, but knowing you're such a goal-oriented person, you're starting to begin to think about, like, how does this play through and what does this look like? Talk to us about what was going through your mind in the days and weeks afterwards.
Yeah, I had every intention of coming back 100%. They're going to go in and this is without admitting to myself, they're going to go in and take out part of my brain in terms of the surgery and stuff. And then there's the radiation, the chemo, and all that stuff. And, I knew when we were all done with that, it wasn't 100%, but I felt like I was starting to recover. And over a 6-month period of time, did get better, but not close to the 100%. I mean, I used to joke around about, well, I'm at 95. And then it was 85, and now it's kind of like 75. But, all these are a little bit of a push. But there's specific things that I am not great at anymore. But there's also, one of the things I've kind of had to get my head around is having time and opportunity and even understanding of things that I can focus on now that I never did before. That was kind of what I was talking about earlier in terms of, my priorities and stuff like that. You just made a comment about anybody who's gone through this. There's a guy that I knew growing up in my hometown. He just had the same thing done. Wow. And now he and I have connected and are talking, and I haven't talked to him in 30, 40 years, but we are now. And then she and her wife, she and Amber and his wife, we were all four on a call for an hour and a half the other night, just talking and, her giving description, understanding, in terms of what she's dealing with, et cetera. And I look at that and all the time just say, so are there other opportunities like that, whatever they may be, in terms of folks that I've known, folks that I know now, situations I've never had a chance to address or tend to or be a part of, that I have some of that's come up. And that's kind of, as I've now opened myself to, if it is possible to be able to help others and having the time and the place and the opportunity to do it that I never thought I had before. And, and I've looked back on it and gone, and we both laugh about this. Yeah, I was going to work till I was 70, no problem. And then I would have had to stop and go, and now what are we going to do with my retirement at 70? Well, now we have it at 60, and we're moving forward with being able to get past COVID and be able to do stuff and time with each other, with our family, with our friends, and all that kind of stuff. And it feels like a blessing. I know that's kind of crazy, but it does. It feels like a blessing.
What a wonderful perspective you have on how you can focus on the things you can control and focus on how you can use this trial to bless others. And I love that about your heart and the way you guys are walking through that. It truly is a testimony to me and to others. So thanks for sharing that.
My pleasure.
And so what were some of the things that you've had to walk through in this new season and the uncertainty that brings?
Well, I think one of the first things, and Bill has touched on it a lot, is, I think, the first thing that we have to do is, and I think this is a it just automatically reshuffles the deck, in terms of your priorities. Even when he was still continuing to work, he went back to work. He was the CEO of a company 3 weeks after brain surgery. It was a struggle.
What a trooper.
Yeah, but but we knew, just in our hearts that this was no longer the most important thing. So we took a little bit of a carpe diem approach, I think, like you said, with the eye on the future, but like you mentioned, everything doesn't wait.
We can't
these
presume
trips
upon the
we've been
future.
talking about taking, all of our, lives, maybe we go ahead and take a couple of those, which we did. This was all pre-COVID. So those are things that you think about. You look, and that was where you and your team were such a comfort. You didn't really bat an eye in terms of what this was going to do to our plan.
Because it meant that you stopped working earlier. That's one.
Absolutely.
That's one thing we had to change in the plan.
Absolutely.
And why it's so important, frankly, to have a plan that can be flexible,
Right.
Right.
because life is messy.
Right,
And
and
y'all
one of the
experienced
first
it.
things that you did was reassure us. It looks like you're going to be okay. And this is before that we knew he was going to stop working quite that early, but even then when he did. And so I love it when we meet and Andrew plays with those different little
all the different
variables
what-if
and all the
scenarios.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, it's been a season of initially a season of shock, but actually a season of peace and just understanding God's faithfulness. He's put people in our lives like you. I look back and think, his hand was on us all along, and in terms of he knew this was going to happen, and maybe that's why we always had the values that we did, and didn't live outside of our. We lived within our means. We didn't overextend ourselves for our children's college education. They did go through private Christian school, but I think that for us to have this happen at this point in our lives and be okay, we know a lot of people that probably wouldn't be in an event like that, and the fact that we are is just just more testimony to God's faithfulness and how comfortable we are with you as our advisor, through this season.
Well, no one ever wants to hear a diagnosis or a call like that, but boy, I tell you, what a testimony you guys have been as I've been able to be beside you and watch you walk through this season. So I know God's using you because all of your friends and neighbors and coworkers, they're seeing the way that you're walking through these difficult seasons of life with faithfulness. And I just give thanks to him and to you for being so willing to be vulnerable and share that today with our listeners. Because, I'm pretty certain that somebody listening right now is dealing with that sort of issue and may not have the kind of peace that you just described. So thanks for being willing to talk about that.
Sure.
Some people listening will know of us at Ronald Blue Trust and be clients, but some are not. And so just if you were talking to, describing it to maybe one of your friends on your back porch, could you tell us, what are some of the specific things? You mentioned values alignment. What are some of those specific things that drew you to us?
Well, I think the alignment of our goals was one of the chief ideas. This wasn't where someone was speaking about this and we were hoping for to talk about something else. This was, we were aligned almost immediately in terms of what the priorities should be and how to go about attaining them. There was definitely a biblical approach and perspective in all of this, and I don't know if that's something that is just day in and day out with you folks. I think it is. But with us, it was like right from the beginning, there was that kind of alignment and us being literally on the same page, which was terrific.
Yeah, I've worked at places, I've been other than Ronald Blue Trust, but I tell you, it's been such a blessing to be able to combine my technical expertise with biblical wisdom when I'm offering advice. Because, listen, I know a lot, and there's a lot of great knowledge out there in the world, but ultimately we know that God's truths are what are timeless. They always work regardless of the season. And that was something that really resonated with y'all. It sounds like.
100%. And then we got to talking about the plans and stuff and, more detail. And there was, priorities in terms of giving. I had to write this down, posterity and legacy. And then there were other investments, things that we could be a part of that were important to other believers and people that we were interacting with and talking with. And everything just lined up in terms of, where we are now and where we're looking to be in the near and further future.
You don't have to justify those things that are important. Why are we giving this much money away this year? Why are we, why do we want to keep this cash on hand? Whatever. There was a little bit of, the feeling in the past is that I felt that we had to make not make an argument for it. We're here, it's celebrated, it's woven into the plan. It's just a given, that's what we want to do, and that completely aligns with your counsel and your guidance. So.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out, because that is a difference, that we're not going to fight you or tell you, well, don't do this because this doesn't have this is not don't give this money away because, it's not beneficial from a tax standpoint, right? Of course, we're going to consider those things, but if your heart is to give, how can we help you give?
Right.
To reach your goals, right? Like you said earlier, Bill.
Right.
Well, let's take a couple of those things, because I think there's so many people out there are wrestling with the kinds of issues that you guys have wrestled with in this season, right? And so you stop getting a paycheck.
Yeah.
How does that feel? Give me a couple of words that describe what it feels like to no longer have a paycheck coming in from your work.
Go ahead.
I think it's this is really our first calendar year where that's been the case, just because of financial arrangements and things we had for 2020. So it's a transition year for us, and we are, I think, doing really well with it. We came up with the number that we were going to live on annually.
Right. You set a target.
We set a target.
What it's going to take for us to live.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I might say it, at y'all's prompting, this is, because one thing that hasn't been stated yet is one of the reasons we're so happy here is we have a plan. We have a roadmap. I mean, we can see it. That's one of my favorite things that we do when we're in conversation with you, and Andrew is so good at, putting up all these variables and things like that. But so that's important, is to be able to see, well, if we want to do this, how does that impact the roadmap? How does that impact the plan? So to your question, we came up with this number, I think, for the year. And I looked at Bill, and I'm kind of conservative, so I was like, I think we can probably do a little better than that. Let's see if we can't shave. I think we started out shaved about $24,000 off the annual number that we said we need, and so far so good. Here we are in December, and we've made it work. I mean, we haven't had any major capital expenses other than the wedding, and that was in the plan.
That was in the plan, right?
Yeah. So.
Yeah, the piece that I've seen when you can bring clarity to what, because it is scary to go from paycheck and a high income can cover a lot of issues.
Lack of discipline or
lack
mistake.
Of discipline, right.
Absolutely.
And, that goes away.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're faced with, okay, we have what we're going to have. And now we've got, it can create a sense of anxiety. We definitely see people wrestle with that. But what you said was one of the ways we have helped you to avoid that or to overcome that natural sense to be worried is to come up with a plan, right? Yep. So set some goals. And I love it that when we set goals with you guys, you want to achieve them. So, hey, let's set a goal for cash, and you'll keep a little more. Hey, let's set a goal for spending, and you'll spend a little less. So I love your goal-oriented nature.
Yeah. Anybody that operates independently, and there's a ton of them, there is no substitute for having folks like you and your team to be able to advise. And, as it turns out, you don't do it for free, no issue there, but it's been far more worth it in terms of not only production, but peace. I mean, it's still kind of something we're still wrestling with, a little bit, but it's diminishing each and every month, every year, and it's been a real blessing for us.
When he used the word peace, and I think that's a great word. It takes the questions out of it. Where before we might have questioned because we didn't have this specific plan. Can we do this? Should we do this or whatever? And so, yes, I love the peace that comes because I do tend to be a little bit anxious about certain things like that. So, but I'm not. It's like I can look at it. He can say, we can do this, and I can go, it's not in the plan, or
that's true,
or is in the
or
plan.
It is in the plan. You're right.
Let's spend it.
Exactly.
Because it's accounted for, like the wedding. I mean, that
absolutely.
Those big outlays can be scary,
Right.
but as you said, because they were in the plan.
I told him the other day I was starting to open bills and things like that, and I was like, so just so you know, it's going to feel like we're just hemorrhaging money in November and December, but take heart. It's in the plan.
Good.
It's okay.
It's in the plan. Well, Brooke, my wife and I, Brooke, there's just something special about having an objective third party speak into our lives because we have a Ronald Blue advisor. That's how I first came to the company, actually, was we were clients of the firm. And to be able to just have somebody that's kind of removed from us and the baggage that I bring and she brings about money and finances, and just somebody removed from that, objective, that can speak wisdom into it, that's been incredibly valuable for us. And that sounds like what you guys are describing. Yeah. It's been valuable too.
100%.
Well, so when you talk about, let's talk about generosity, because I know that's near and dear to your hearts. And that's something when you are in a season for retirement, generosity could look different, because maybe we have a lot of clients that might give a certain percentage, let's say, of income and all that. Well, your paycheck is gone. Right. So how have you guys had the peace? What are some of the things that you've done to be comfortable with continuing to be generous and follow God's calling in that regard in this new season?
Well, like I said, I think we're in a transition year. So just to be candid, the benchmark that we're using this year is, I wouldn't call it income. Where did we come up with that number? Anyway, yes, it's income, Bill. We have a little bit of income now, but I think it is, we've asked you, you've given us some guidance, but not specific. It's not, will you do this? Some people do this. Will we give on our investments? That's still to be determined. I could see us doing that. So we could easily we're pretty young to be in this season. Right. So we are, we're not drawing Social Security and things like that yet. So that will be the next question to be answered. How did the investments do last year? What did we earn, and how much of that do we give over and above what we have already planned to give?
I love what you're talking about, Amber, because it's very common for people who are generous to think about while they're working to give as a percentage. So you give of your income. You said that. That's. But what you just described there is something that not a lot of people get. What you said was we've had investments. We have other things that are also going up that God's blessed us with. And I know we've talked about that in years. It's not just your income. It's also the other things that He's blessed you with. And you've been really challenging yourselves to give of that increase. So not just giving of your income, but giving of that increase. So thank you for sharing that, because that's something that so many people miss, the blessings that are going up in your investments in a year like this year.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's think about the scripture or the biblical principles that you've heard and that we've talked about over the last 5 years together. What are some of them? Just give us a few that really resonate with you guys, really been helpful.
Well, we were kind of talking about this morning. I think it's really neat. We're different. The Lord laid two different things on our minds. With me, it's the biggest thing that comes to my mind is stewardship. So just wanting to be a good steward of whatever God has blessed us with, So I would say the parable of the talents, is a great example of that. anything where He's blessed us. The verse in Luke about, to whom much is given, much will be demanded, that type of thing. So we're the points in our lives where we did have, rich financial blessings, that was always kind of forefront in our thinking is, this didn't just happen. This is a God-ordained event. What would He have us do with this surplus? And
I
so
love that
stewardship,
question.
so stewardship is, I think, the most important for me. But then it's not all been financial blessings. So the other verse that came to my mind is to just to be content in all circumstances, because we've had challenges as well. And so the contentment and the stewardship are, I guess, my driving things.
I love that.
Yeah, it was a big turnaround, certainly in my life, and I think even a little bit with Amber. But in terms of who you're working for and what you're doing and how you're doing and all the rest of it, there's an awful lot that has a bad habit of focusing on how much you're making, and when the importance of that. And I wrestled with that, and I had to come to far better understanding and God's guidance in terms of that kind of thing. And I found a scripture that I used to be able to remember, but that I've always, kept a grip on. Hebrews 13:5. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you and never will I forsake you. And that's one of those scriptures that I would literally repeat to myself every day. And it is given me guidance that she's been okay with and been on the same page with me. And the opportunity and the idea, not only with friends and family, obviously, but also with others and other groups. And we're still getting folks that are reaching out and saying, hey, would you be willing to, can you, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And we have a tendency to do a little bit of that during the year. And then right now, over the next 2 weeks, we're going to finish off the year financially in terms of taxes and stuff. But that's just as of December 31st, and it'll start all over again on January 1st. And we're really looking forward to that in terms of, who, how much, and to, who are we going to give it? And we're really, really excited about that.
Well, I loved, again, your hearts for generosity, and I think watching us helping you answer that question for you of how much is enough, and building the plan around that gave you confidence that what, we can do these things and we can still reach our financial goals. And then because we have a finish line, we've helped you guys kind of identify that. It's challenging you to say, okay, God, you've blessed me with more. What should we do in those years that happens? It's been a joy to walk beside you guys through this journey. Tell us what you're looking forward to next in this new season. What's ahead? 2022, 2023. What are you excited about?
Well, for me, I've got time that I never had before. And, I'm looking at this from a priority standpoint in terms of my relationship with God and the Holy Spirit, who I want to really get to know better. My time with Amber and our exchange and just support of each other on a daily basis in whole lots of different ways. My relationship with my sons, my new daughter-in-law, and even friends. I mean, there's folks that I've got on my prayer list that, are friends or folks that I barely even know just because they have need. And I've got time in terms of and desire to pray for their health, to pray for their recovery, to pray for any and all of that. And that's what I believe we've got new and moving forward with it. I know I've got new and really moving forward with it and looking forward to it.
Wow. How neat is it to hear a man like yourself talking about I'm not listening to the world. The world says more stuff is what is happiness, right? But all those things you just described that are on your list that excites you for this new year, are things that are eternal. They're relationships with people. And so thank you for sharing that. That's a great list to be excited for.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say it. I said it earlier. I'll say it again. I'm really so honored and blessed to be able to come alongside you guys, to get to know you, to get to know your family, and just to be there as you walk through life and to provide wise counsel along the way. So thank you for letting me do that.
We
Thank you for
appreciate
doing
very
it.
much.
Really enjoy it.
Well, Bill and Amber Brigham, thank you for taking a chance and sitting down to your first podcast. And we're just glad that you could share these things. It's today, I promise you, somebody listening has been blessed by what you've shared, and I just want to thank you for that. That's my prayer and my hope that you've done, that someone listening has been blessed by that. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And I want to thank our listeners also for joining us today on the Wisdom for Wealth for Life podcast. I'm Kerry Mallory, and I hope you'll join us again soon.
Thank you so much for listening to the Wisdom for Wealth for Life podcast. If you are looking for financial advice, please contact us. Please visit ronblue.com. That's ronblue.com. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcasts. Ronald Blue Trust is a trademark used by Thrivent Trust Company, a Federal Savings Association, and Thrivent Trust Company of Tennessee, Incorporated, a Tennessee Public Trust Company, separate affiliated entities. Trust and investment management accounts and services offered by Ronald Blue Trust are not insured by the FDIC or any other federal government agency, are not deposits or other obligation of, nor guaranteed by any bank or bank affiliate, and are subject to invest risk, including possible loss of the principal amount invested.